She inherited a rotting 1972 fishing trawler from a grandfather she'd never met. Its hull covered in barnacles and listing dangerously in a forgotten slip at the end of a Tampa marina. Everyone told her to let the harbor master sell it for scrap. But when 32-year-old single mother Maya Chen climbed aboard that ghost ship with her 9-year-old daughter Lily, she discovered something that would turn their dollar store existence into a $47 million mystery, one that powerful people had killed to keep buried for half a century. Before we dive into the story, make sure to smash subscribe, because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The certified letter arrived on a Thursday afternoon while Maya was cleaning rooms at the seaside motel. Her third job that week. Her back ached from scrubbing bathtubs, her hands were cracked from industrial cleaners, and her mind was doing the impossible math of how to stretch $127 until next Friday's paycheck. When her supervisor found her in room 214 and said there was certified mail requiring her signature, Maya's stomach dropped. Certified letters meant eviction notices or court summons, or the kind of news that people living paycheck to paycheck learned to dread. Miss Maya Chen. The letter was from a law firm in Tampa, the kind with 3 names that sounded expensive. We regret to inform you of the passing of your maternal grandfather, Captain Raymond Chen. As his sole living heir, you are entitled to his estate, consisting primarily of a commercial fishing vessel currently moored at Harborview Marina. Slip 89. Please contact our office to arrange transfer of title and settle outstanding marina fees of $4,200. Maya read it 3 times, standing in that motel hallway that smelled like bleach in other people's lives. Her grandfather, she'd known he existed the same way you know distant planets exist, as an abstract fact with no real connection to your world. Her mother had died when Maya was 7, and before that had spoken of her father exactly twice, both times with a bitterness that made young Maya afraid to ask questions. All she knew was that Raymond Chen had been some kind of fisherman, who'd chosen the sea over his family and never looked back, and now he was dead, leaving her a boat and $4,000 in debt she couldn't possibly pay. That night, after her shift at the diner where she waitressed from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., Maya sat at their efficiency apartment's wobbly kitchen table and looked up Harborview Marina on her cracked phone screen. The photos showed a sprawling complex of docks, some holding gleaming yachts that probably cost more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes, others holding forgotten vessels in various stages of decay. She tried searching for her grandfather's name and found almost nothing. No obituary, nor social media, no trace of a life beyond a single mention in a 1973 Tampa Tribune article about fishing tournament results. Mom, why are you crying? Lily appeared in the doorway, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 3, its fur worn thin from too much love and too many nights providing comfort when Maya couldn't afford much else. I'm not crying, baby, just tired. Maya wiped her eyes quickly. Come here. Lily climbed into her lap, too big for it really, but neither of them cared. Maya held her daughter and breathed in the strawberry scent of the discount shampoo they shared, and made a decision. On Saturday, they'd drive to Tampa and see this boat. Maybe there was something on board they could sell, something that would pay the marina fees and leave enough for Lily's school field trip next month, the one Maya had already told her they couldn't afford. Saturday morning arrived with rain that matched Maya's mood. The 2-hour drive in their 2003 Honda Civic, with its check engine light that had been on for 6 months, and its passenger window that wouldn't roll up all the way, felt longer with Lily asking questions Maya couldn't answer. Did Grandpa Raymond have a big boat? I don't know, sweetie. Why didn't we ever meet him? It's complicated. Was he nice? I honestly don't know. Harborview Marina sprawled along Tampa Bay like a small city built on water. The office was a weathered building that had survived decades of hurricanes, its walls covered with faded photos of fish that probably weighed more than Lily. Behind the counter sat a man in his 70s, skin like leather, eyes that had seen too much sun and too many sad stories like the one Maya was about to tell. I'm looking for slip 89. Maya showed him the letter. The boat belonged to Raymond Chen. Something flickered across the man's face. Recognition, maybe, or concern. He studied Maya for a long moment. Your Ray's granddaughter. I can see it now. You got his eyes. He pulled a key from a pegboard where dozens of others hung like forgotten promises. Follow me, and Miss Chen. He paused. Your grandfather was a good man. Whatever anyone told you, whatever you heard, He was a good man who made one choice that cost him everything else. Before Maya could ask what that meant, he was already walking toward the docks, moving with the rolling gait of someone who'd spent more life on water than land. They passed million-dollar yachts, with names like tax deduction and liquid assets, past smaller vessels that looked loved and maintained, past a few that had clearly been abandoned by owners who ran out of money or hope. The farther they walked, the older and more decrepit the boats became, until they reached the last dock, the one that sagged slightly, and where the wood looked soft with rot. There she is, the Jade Dragon. Maya's heart sank so fast she felt dizzy. The boat was maybe 50 feet long, commercial fishing trawler style, with a wheelhouse that rose 2 stories above the deck. Or it had been, once. Now it was a floating wreck. Rust streaked the hull in orange tears. The blue paint had faded to the color of a bruise. Windows were cracked or missing. The deck was covered in what looked like years of accumulated debris, bird droppings, and decay. A tattered Chinese flag hung limp from the masts. Mummy, it's scary. Lily gripped Maya's hand tighter. Your grandfather lived aboard for the last 20 years of his life. The harbor master's voice was gentle. Kept to himself mostly, but always paid his fees on time. Worked odd jobs around the marina. Knew boats better than anyone I ever met. When he died 3 weeks ago, I found him in his bunk, peaceful like. Heart just gave out. He was 8 for Dot. Did he have friends? Maya didn't know why she asked. Ray had acquaintances. Don't think he had friends. But I'll tell you something strange. For the last 10 years, maybe longer, people came around asking about this boat, offering to buy it. Some offered serious money, 50, 60,000, for what looks like scrap. Ray always said the same thing. The Jade Dragon isn't for sale. Not ever. After he died, they came back. But the boat's in legal limbo until you take possession or disclaim it. He handed Maya the key. I'd suggest you disclaim it. Marina fees are stacking up, and it'll cost more to make her seaworthy than she's worth. But that's your choice. He walked away, leaving Maya and Lily alone with their inheritance. The gangplank creaked ominously as Maya tested it with her weight. It held, barely. She went first, holding Lily's hand, stepping carefully over gaps where the wood had rotted through completely. The deck felt soft in places, and Maya steered them around the worst spots, her heart hammering. Can we go home? Lily whispered. Just a quick look, baby, just to see if there's anything worth saving. The wheelhouse door was swollen shut from humidity and time. Maya had to shoulder it hard 3 times before it groaned open, revealing a dim interior that smelled like mildew, salt, old paper, and something else, something metallic and strangely familiar. Inside was organized chaos. Every surface was covered with nautical charts, some modern, some ancient-looking, and yellowed with age. A ship's wheel dominated the center, its wood worn smooth by decades of hands. Instruments that Maya couldn't identify cluttered the dashboard. A ham radio sat partially disassembled on what might have been a navigation table. Wow, Lily had forgotten her fear momentarily. It's like a pirate ship. Maya moved deeper into the wheelhouse. A steep ladder led down into what she assumed was the living quarters. Come on, stay close. The ladder was solid, surprisingly, and led into a surprisingly spacious cabin. A galley kitchen ran along one wall, its stove probably older than Maya, but clean, organized. A small table was bolted to the floor, its surface covered in notebooks, all filled with her grandfather's cramped handwriting. Maya picked one up. The pages were filled with coordinates, weather observations, notes in both English and Chinese characters she couldn't read. The dates went back years, decades even, all the way to 1973. Forward were 2 small cabins. The first contained a bunk bed and some fishing equipment. The second, the master cabin, made Maya's chest tighten. The bed was made with military precision, a thin wool blanket pulled tight. On the nightstand sat a small shrine, red candles, incense holders, and photographs. Maya picked up the largest photo with trembling hands. A young woman, beautiful, holding a baby. The woman looked exactly like Maya's mother. The baby had to be her mother, which meant the young woman was Maya's grandmother. Someone she'd never known existed until this moment. Beneath the photo was another, this one older, sepia-toned and cracked. A young man in what looked like a military uniform stood on the deck of a pristine boat, the Jade Dragon in her glory days, holding a massive fish and grinning with pride. Raymond Chen as a young man, before whatever happened that turned him into a ghost. Who are they? Mum. Family, baby, family I never knew we had. They searched the rest of the cabin, a tiny bathroom with a marine toilet that probably hadn't worked in years, though it was surprisingly clean, storage lockers filled with old clothes, fishing gear, and boxes of paperwork that Maya knew she should probably look through, but couldn't face right now. Throughout it all, that metallic smell persisted, not unpleasant exactly, but present, like the boat itself was trying to tell her something. It wasn't until they were about to leave that Maya noticed something wrong. She'd lived in enough cheap apartments to develop an eye for space, for the way rooms should fit together. The master cabin felt too small. She walked back into it and paced from the door to the far wall. 8 steps. Then she went outside and paced along the exterior hull. 14 steps. 6 steps of space that didn't exist inside the cabin. Stay here for just a second, honey. Maya went back into the cabin and examined the walls. The one adjoining the main cabin area was covered in what looked like built-in storage. Wooden panels that matched the boat's interior. She knocked on different sections. Most sounded solid, but one section, maybe 3 feet wide, sounded hollow. She ran her hands along the edges, feeling for a seam or catch. Nothing obvious, but when she pressed hard on one corner, something clicked softly, and a section of the panel shifted inward slightly. Her heart was racing now. She pressed harder, and the entire panel swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a dark space behind the cabin wall. Maya pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam revealed a narrow compartment running the length of the cabin, maybe 3 feet deep and 10 feet long, and packed inside, wrapped in deteriorating plastic and old canvas. Stacked floor to ceiling were dozens of rectangular packages. With shaking hands, Maya pulled out the nearest package. It was heavy, maybe 20 pounds. She unwrapped the plastic carefully, revealing a layer of oilcloth beneath, and beneath that, wrapped in what looked like silk, was a lacquered wooden box. The box was beautiful despite its age, decorated with hand-painted dragons and clouds. Maya opened the latch. Inside, nestled in red velvet, were small carved figures. She lifted one out and held it up to the light. It was maybe 4 inches tall, intricately detailed, a warrior or nobleman in traditional Chinese dress. The figure was carved from what looked like white stone with green veining running through it. Jade. The figure was Jade. There had to be 40 or 50 packages in the hidden compartment. Maya pulled out another. This one contained a jade bowl, translucent and delicate, so thin she could see her fingers through it when she held it up to the light. Another contained a pair of jade bracelets that seemed to glow with an inner light. Another held a jade seal or stamp covered in characters she couldn't read. Each piece was museum quality, the kind of thing you saw behind glass with security guards watching. "Mummy, what is it?" Maya hadn't heard Lily come into the cabin. She quickly rewrapped the figure. "Just old stuff, baby. Grandpa's stuff." She tried to keep her voice steady, tried not to let Lily hear the panic, because Maya knew enough about jade to know that authentic antique Chinese jade was valuable, very valuable, and she was looking at dozens of pieces, maybe hundreds. This wasn't a boat full of old fishing gear and mildew. This was a floating treasure vault, and someone had known about it. Someone who'd been offering her grandfather money for years. Someone who was going to come looking now that Raymond Chen was dead, and the boat had a new owner who didn't know what she possessed. They needed to leave. Now. "Come on, sweetie. Let's go." Maya closed the hidden panel, making sure it clicked back into place. She grabbed one of the notebooks from the table, the most recent one, and stuffed it in her purse, along with the small jade figure. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking as they climbed back up to the wheelhouse and out onto the deck. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still grey and threatening. As they hurried down the dock toward the parking lot, Maya glanced back once and saw someone standing on a nearby yacht. A man in expensive casual clothes, watching them with binoculars. When he saw her looking, he lowered the binoculars but didn't look away. Maya drove too fast back to their apartment, checking the rearview mirror constantly. Lily fell asleep in the passenger seat, exhausted by the adventure, but Maya's mind was racing. Once Lily was tucked into their shared bed that night, still sleeping, Maya sat at the kitchen table and opened her laptop. She started with the jade figure. It took her 3 hours of searching, comparing images, reading articles about Chinese antiquities, but she finally found something that made her blood run cold. The figure's style matched pieces from the Qing dynasty, specifically from the imperial collection. The kind of pieces that should be in museums. The kind that, if authentic, could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Each dot, she switched to searching for her grandfather's name and the Jade Dragon. Still almost nothing. But she did find one thing, a brief mention in a book about smuggling in Southeast Asia that had been digitized. In 1973, a Chinese-American fishing vessel called the Jade Dragon, captained by Raymond Chen, had been briefly detained by customs in San Francisco with suspected smuggled goods, but was released due to insufficient evidence. The book noted that Chen had been a Navy translator during the Vietnam War and had connections throughout Southeast Asia. Maya's phone buzzed, making her jump. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her swipe to accept. "Hello, Miss Chen." The voice was smooth, male, American, but with an accent she couldn't place. "My name is Michael Jiang. I represent a group of collectors who have been interested in your grandfather's boat for some time. I understand you've taken possession. Who is this? How did you get my number?" "That's not important. What's important is that we're prepared to make you an extremely generous offer for the Jade Dragon. $75,000, cash, tomorrow. You sign over the title, walk away, and never think about that boat again. You can pay off the marina fees and have enough left over to change your life and your daughter's life." Maya's mouth went dry. The mention of Lily wasn't accidental. It was a message. "We know about your daughter. I haven't decided what I'm doing with the boat. Miss Chen. I'm going to be frank with you because I think you're a smart woman. That boat and everything on it represents a complicated situation. Your grandfather spent 50 years protecting something that doesn't belong to him, and now that burden has fallen to you. We're offering you a gracious exit. I strongly suggest you take it, and if I don't, then you'll discover why your grandfather spent half a century living like a pauper on a rotting boat instead of selling what he had and living in comfort. Some prices are too high to pay, Miss Chen, even for $75 million. The line went dead. Maya stared at her phone, her whole body trembling. $75 million. He'd said $75 million, which meant the jade on that boat was worth far more. But it also meant these people, whoever they were deadly serious. You don't throw around numbers like that unless the stakes are existential. She opened the notebook she'd taken from the boat and started reading. Her grandfather's handwriting was precise, methodical. The entries were dated, going back 20 years. Most were mundane, weather observations, maintenance notes, reminders about marina fees. But scattered throughout were other entries, written in a kind of code, coordinates followed by dates, names she didn't recognize, notes in Chinese characters. And then, about 10 pages in, she found an entry in clear English dated just 2 months before his death. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you've found what I've protected. I don't know who you are, probably family. Maybe Maya if she's still alive and they found her. Listen carefully. In 1973, I made a choice that cost me everything except my honor. I was working as a translator for Navy intelligence in Saigon when the war was ending. Chaos everywhere. South Vietnam collapsing. Everyone trying to escape. I was contacted by a man named Dr. Liang Wei, a curator at the National Palace Museum in Taipei. He'd been sent to Saigon to retrieve pieces from an exhibition, important pieces, part of the imperial collection that had been touring Southeast Asia. But the city was falling faster than anyone expected. Unofficial channels were impossible. Dr. Liang was desperate. These pieces represented China's heritage, thousands of years of history. If they fell into the wrong hands, they'd disappear forever, sold to private collectors or destroyed. He begged me to help get them out. So I did. I used my military contacts to get the pieces aboard the Jade Dragon. Told everyone I was evacuating refugees, which was true. I took 32 people out that trip, but hidden in the hold were crates containing 127 pieces of imperial jade. Dr. Liang was supposed to meet me in San Francisco, but he never arrived. Later, I learned he'd died in the final days of Saigon, killed in the shelling. I tried to contact the museum in Taipei, but the pieces I helped evacuate were never officially documented, probably because everything was so chaotic at the end. If I came forward with them, I'd be accused of theft. If I sold them, I'd be desecrating heritage pieces meant for all Chinese people. So I waited. I thought eventually the right moment would come, the right authority to return them to. That moment never came. Now I'm old, and I'm tired, and I'm leaving this burden to you. The jade belongs to the Chinese people, not in private collections, not sold to the highest bidder. But there are people who've known about these pieces for decades. People who've wanted them for private collections or to sell. They've offered money, made threats. I've spent 50 years keeping them safe and keeping my family safe by staying away from them. I'm sorry I wasn't the grandfather you deserved. I'm sorry I chose Jade over family. But maybe you can finish what Dr. Liang and I started. Maybe you can finally bring these treasures home. Maya read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Her grandfather hadn't abandoned his family because he didn't care. He'd sacrificed everything to protect stolen heritage, to do what he believed was right, even when it cost him his daughter, his granddaughter, 50 years of his life. If you're enjoying this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. She spent the rest of the night researching. The National Palace Museum in Taipei had indeed had touring exhibitions in the 1970s. Many items had been lost during the chaos at the end of the Vietnam War. There were entire books written about looted antiquities from that era, pieces that had vanished and occasionally surfaced in private collections or black market auctions. The jade her grandfather had saved could indeed be worth tens of millions, maybe more. But more than that, these pieces were part of China's cultural heritage, irreplaceable links to a civilization thousands of years old. As dawn broke, Maya made coffee and tried to think clearly. She had 3 options. She could take Michael Zhong's $75,000 and walk away. It was more money than she'd ever seen, enough to move somewhere safe, give Lily a better life. Stop working 3 jobs just to stay 1 step ahead of eviction. She could keep the jade and try to sell it herself, though she had no idea how and suspected it would put an even bigger target on her back. Or she could try to do what her grandfather had wanted, return the pieces to where they belonged, and hope that justice meant something in a world where people casually mentioned her daughter as leverage. That the decision was made easier by what happened next. At 8 a.m., there was a knock on her apartment door. Maya looked through the peephole and saw a woman in an expensive suit, Chinese, maybe in her 50s, holding a briefcase. Maya opened the door with the chain still attached. "Can I help you, Miss Chen?" "My name is Dr. Helen Wu. I'm a curator at the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco and a consultant for the National Palace Museum in Taipei. I've been searching for your grandfather for 20 years. Please, I know you're frightened, but I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to help you finish what Raymond Chen and Dr. Liang Wei started." Maya stared at her for a long moment, then closed the door, removed the chain, and opened it fully. "Come in." Lily was still sleeping in the bedroom, and Maya wanted to keep it that way. They sat at the tiny kitchen table, the same table where Maya had been sitting when she learned her grandfather existed, and Dr. Wu opened her briefcase. She pulled out old photographs, documents, a museum catalogue from 1972. This was the essence of Jade exhibition. 127 pieces from the Qing Dynasty Imperial Collection, touring museums in Southeast Asia to promote cultural exchange. When Saigon fell in 1975, the pieces were presumed lost or destroyed. But I had a professor, Dr. Liang Wei, who told me before he died that he'd gotten the jade out, that he'd trusted an American sailor named Raymond Chen. I've been looking for your grandfather ever since. How did you find me? I've had an alert set up for Raymond Chen's name, death records, property transfers, anything. When he died and the boat title went into probate with your name attached, I flew out immediately. But I'm not the only one who's been looking. There are collectors, Miss Chen, very wealthy, very ruthless people who view these pieces as investments or status symbols. They've known about the Jade Dragon for years, but your grandfather was careful, always moving, always watching. Now that he's gone, they're going to move fast. Someone called me last night, offered me money, threatened my daughter. Dr. Wu's expression hardened. Michael Zhong, he represents a syndicate of collectors based in Hong Kong and Silicon Valley. They've been trying to acquire imperial jade pieces for decades, usually through illegal means. If they get these pieces, they'll disappear into private collections, never to be seen again. Is that what you want? No. Maya surprised herself with how quickly she answered. My grandfather gave up everything to keep these pieces safe. I'm not going to let them be locked in some billionaire's vault. Then let me help you. Dr. Wu leaned forward. We can do this legally, properly. The pieces need to be authenticated, documented, and then returned to the National Palace Museum. It won't be quick, probably months of work, and it won't be entirely safe. But I can arrange protection, legal representation, and most importantly, I can make sure the world knows what your grandfather did. Make sure his sacrifice meant something." Over the next 4 days, Maya's life became something from a thriller she wouldn't have believed if she wasn't living it. Dr. Wu arranged for museum security to guard the boat, while a team of authenticators examined the jade. Maya called in sick to all 3 jobs, knowing she was probably getting fired, but unable to care. She moved Lily to stay with her friend's family, telling her it was like a fun extended sleepover. Hating the lie but knowing it was necessary, the authentication team was led by Dr. James Morrison, a white man in his 60s who'd spent 40 years studying Chinese jade. He examined each piece with a jeweler's loupe, took microscopic samples, compared them against photographs and descriptions from the 1972 catalogue. On the 3rd day, he emerged from the Jade Dragon looking like he'd seen something religious. "Miss Chen," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "these are authentic. Every single piece matches catalogue descriptions from the essence of Jade's exhibition. The craftsmanship, the style, the imperial seals carved into several pieces. This is the lost imperial collection, the most significant find of Chinese antiquities in 50 years. Your grandfather saved priceless pieces of human heritage." But it wasn't over. That night, Maya received another call. This time the voice was different, harder. "Miss Chen, you're making a mistake. We know the museum team has been on the boat. We know you're planning to return the jade. We're prepared to offer you $2 million, final offer, for information about when and how the pieces will be transported to the museum. Just information. You tell us the route, the timing, and you never hear from us again. You and your daughter get to live comfortable lives. I'm not interested." There was a pause. "Then think about your daughter, Miss Chen. Think about what could happen if you keep refusing to be reasonable. Accidents happen every day. Children get lost. Mothers have car crashes. It would be tragic, but these things happen." Maya's hand tightened on the phone. "If anything happens to my daughter, if anything happens to me, every media outlet in the country will know about this jade and who's been trying to steal it. Dr. Wu has already prepared press releases, and they're sitting with lawyers ready to go public the moment something seems wrong. You touch my family, and you'll have every law enforcement agency and every museum in the world hunting you. The jade won't be worth the attention you'll get." She hung up before he could respond, her hands shaking so badly she dropped the phone. But the bluff worked. Or maybe it was Dr. Wu's preparations, the security team, the fact that too many people now knew about the jade for it to quietly disappear. Whatever the reason, the threat stopped. The transport happened 2 weeks later. The jade pieces were carefully packed in custom-made cases, loaded into an armored truck under police escort, and driven to the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. Maya and Lily rode in a separate car with Dr. Wu, watching the truck ahead of them carry her grandfather's 50-year secret to safety. At the museum, there was a small private ceremony. Museum directors, Chinese consular officials, reporters from major outlets. They'd wanted to make it bigger, public, but Maya had refused. This wasn't about her. Dr. Wu gave a speech about Dr. Liang Wei and Raymond Chen, about 2 men who'd risked everything to save pieces of heritage in a moment of chaos. She announced that the jade would be displayed in San Francisco for 6 months, then returned permanently to the National Palace Museum in Taipei, where it belonged. Miss Chen, one of the museum directors, approached her afterward. "Your grandfather's actions will be memorialized. We're establishing the Raymond Chen Fellowship for the study and preservation of Chinese cultural heritage. And while we can't offer you money for the jade, obviously, the museum's board has voted to establish a trust fund for your daughter's education. It's the least we can do." Maya stood in the museum gallery, where some of the pieces were already being displayed. Lily next to her, both of them staring at jade bowls and figures and seals that glowed under museum lights like they contained their own inner fire. A small placard told the story, brief but complete. Saved by Dr. Liang Wei and Captain Raymond Chen, 1973. Protected and preserved for 50 years. Returned to the Chinese people, 22/5. "Mummy, that's Grandpa Raymond's name." Lily pointed at the placard. "Yes, baby. Your great-grandfather was a hero." They lived quietly after that. The media attention faded after a few weeks, replaced by other stories, other scandals. Maya found a better job at a marine supply company, just one job, with benefits and regular hours. They moved to a small house, near the water, not fancy but theirs. paid for by the settlement from the marina fees dispute. It turned out the harbor master had been padding the bills for years, and Maya's lawyer had caught it. But sometimes, on Saturday mornings, Maya and Lily drove to Harborview Marina. The Jade Dragon was gone, bought by a maritime museum that wanted to restore her and tell her story. But the harbor master, whose name was Thomas, and who'd known her grandfather better than he'd initially let on, sometimes invited them onto his boat and told stories about Raymond Chen, how he'd been unfailingly honest, how he'd helped younger boat owners learn maintenance, how he'd lived simply but had always had money for marina fees and the occasional donation to the local school or family in need, how he'd been alone but not quite lonely, carrying a burden he couldn't share. "He talked about you sometimes," Thomas said one morning, the three of them sitting on his deck drinking coffee, hot chocolate for Lily, toward the end, when he knew his heart was giving out. "He said he had a granddaughter somewhere, Maya, and he hoped you were okay. He said he'd chosen to protect something precious instead of being with precious people, and he didn't know if that made him brave or just a fool." "It made him brave," Maya said quietly. "It made him someone worth being proud of." 3 months after, the jade was returned. An envelope arrived at Maya's house. Inside was a letter from the National Palace Museum and a photograph. The photo showed a new exhibit hall in Taipei, beautiful and modern, with the jade pieces displayed like the treasures they were. Families walked through, children pressed close to the glass, tourists took photos. The letter explained that the exhibit had already been visited by over 100,000 people, that it was the most popular display in the museum, that people came from all over the world to see the lost imperial jade that had been saved twice, once in chaos and once from greed. "Your grandfather's story resonates with visitors," the letter said. "In an age of cynicism, Captain Raymond Chen's sacrifice reminds us that some people still choose honor over comfort, duty over family, the collective good over personal gain. His legacy will inspire generations." That night, Maya added the photo to the small shrine she'd created in their home, the one that held her grandfather's picture from the Jade Dragon, her grandmother's photo, and a small jade figure that Dr. Wu had quietly told her to keep. "Just one," she'd whispered, "for your family, to remember." It wasn't from the imperial collection, probably something Raymond had acquired separately, but it was beautiful, a dragon carved from green jade that seemed to glow in lamplight. Lily stood next to her, looking at the shrine. "I wish I'd met him. Me too, baby. But in a way, we did. We finished what he started." "That's like meeting him." Years later, when Lily was in college studying art history on the Raymond Chen Fellowship, she would write her thesis about cultural heritage protection during wartime. She would interview Dr. Wu, now retired, and Thomas the harbor master, now in his 90s. She would visit the Jade Dragon at the Maritime Museum, where she'd been beautifully restored, her blue hull gleaming again, a Chinese flag flying proud, and she would understand, in a way she couldn't as a hero, what her great-grandfather had sacrificed and what her mother had risked to honor that sacrifice. But that was years away. Now, in their small house by the water, Maya tucked her daughter into bed and thought about inheritance. Her grandfather had left her a boat full of treasure, but the real inheritance had been the choice to do what was right, even when it was hard, even when it cost everything, even when the easy path would have solved all her problems. She'd inherited his burden and his honor, and she'd carried both to the finish line he'd spent 50 years running toward. Some people measure wealth in dollars or possessions, but Maya Chen, who'd gone from scrubbing motel toilets to helping return $75 million in stolen heritage, knew the truth. Real wealth is what you leave behind, not money or things, but the choices you make and the legacy those choices create. Her grandfather had left her proof that one person could stand against greed and power and time itself. That ordinary people, fishermen and hotel maids and 9-year-old girls with worn stuffed rabbits, could be heroes if they had the courage to finish the stories others started. The Jade Dragon sailed on in her new home, restored and honored. The imperial jade glowed under museum lights, touched by thousands of eyes that would never know the woman and girl who'd kept them safe. And somewhere in a small house in Tampa, a single mother and her daughter slept peacefully, the heirs to a treasure no syndicate of collectors could ever buy, because some inheritances aren't meant to be sold. They're meant to be honored, protected, and passed on to people who understand that the greatest wealth isn't what you own, but what you give back to the world. Up next, 2 more powerful stories are waiting for you. Click to discover more incredible tales, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe some secrets are worth exposing.